Pleasure to welcome everyone today to this webinar titled Bengal's Romance with Japan, a Historical Connect. We have the pleasure of having with us today Dr. Rajaram Panda, who is a well-known expert in India on Japan. And as we can see, the topic of his lecture is quite innovative, and I'm sure that many useful ideas will come out of it and we all will enjoy it. Dr. Rajaram Pande, as I said, is a well-known expert on Japan. He is currently senior fellow at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. Earlier, he was a Lok Sabha Research Fellow between 2018 and 2020. Before that, he was senior fellow at Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, and for about 15 years, he was Chief Program Officer, the Japan Foundation, New Delhi. So I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Panda and to all participants who have joined us either here in the seminar hall or online. As I said, the topic of the lecture is very interesting and innovative. Bengal's Romance with Japan, a Historical Connect. I believe that what Dr. Panda is going to argue in his lecture is that there has been too much focus on Japan's economic relations, especially Japan's official development aid to India in the last 60 years or so, and too little work of consequence has been done on especially the Meiji Restoration era period from 1860s up to 1930s, during which many Indian intellectuals, scholars, leaders had a certain fascination for Japan. They visited Japan, they lived in Japan, they wrote about Japan, and they discussed Japan. I think that this is, of course, a very, very fascinating kind of subject of study, because one, Japan in itself is important, of course, but this topic also dovetails into the larger question of how Indian leaders and Indian elite of a certain era looked upon what they thought were Asian civilizations, and Japan being one of the preeminent Asian civilization according to them. So, and we know that Rabindranath Tagore visited Japan and he has written on Japan, and of course there were many others who did the same. So Dr. Panda is going to focus, as I can see from his abstract, on six important people from Bengal: Swami Vivekananda, Rabindranath Tagore, Hariprabha Takeda Matrimony, commoner, Rash Bihari Bose, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and family, and Justice Radha Vinod Pal. So individuals as well as some things associated with this subject. And through their interactions with Japan, Dr. Panda is going to sort of illuminate us about how the perceptions about Japan developed in India and how perceptions about India developed in Japan, and how the relationship, in a way, the basics of the relationship were forged in this era. So without further delay, now I would like to invite Dr. Panda to deliver his lecture.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravi Kumar Mishra, for your generous introduction about the topic and about me. I have been working on Japan for nearly close to 5 decades, and I will not claim that I know Japan in its entirety, but at least I can claim to have some understanding about what kind of country in Japan and what is its history. And today's topic that I have chosen, it is a very, very small portion of a larger project that I'm doing for my Nehru Memorial in fellowship tenure, during the tenorship of this fellowship. This is, as I said, this is a very, very small portion of my introduction, the first chapter. I would say maybe covering, say, roughly 30% or so, which implies that there is much more than what I'm going to speak today. In the contemporary context of Indo-Japan relation, or the way the relationship between the two countries have developed, we tend to focus more on the security, strategic, defense dimensions as the whose importance actually has suddenly emerged in view of geopolitical changes which is taking place, and also in particular in response to China's I would say behavior on many Indo-Pacific issues. This is shaping the foreign policy discourse in many of the countries, not only in India. So that is why most of our contemporary writings, I think in the media also, everyone will notice. The second aspect that is also equally very relevant or also important in the context of our own relationship between the two countries is the economic cooperation. As Dr. Ravi Kumar, Ravi Mishra was telling, trade or joint venture, the presence of Japanese companies slowly that is increasing. Again, and also the ODA, the development projects, in particular in many of the metros, many of the cities, the cooperation, the role of JICA, and many more. And lately, the Indo-Japan cooperation to develop India's Northeast region also is another new thing which has received extra focus during the Modi government's tenure. So these are all areas which are equally very, very important because we need the technology, we need the capital, because they're now, like for example, the Shinkansen projects and all. So this is the second part which has received, more focus. And then the second layer of the emphasis, this is the third. The third part is on the cultural aspect. Cultural aspect, how the soft power and synergy can be honed to the promotion of understanding between the two countries. Now, in this context, I would say it is sometimes which is well overlooked, or I might say underplayed, how this robust relationship in contemporary times has been influenced by historical connect. And even here, it is not possible for me to summarize or even give the facts and as well as interpret the entire or maybe the majority of the what I say historical connect. I mean the people who are who had connection with from Indian people who had connection with Japan. So to make it a very, very micro study, I have deliberately, I felt and also I, realized that there are certain selected luminaries, and those happen to be from Bengal. I mean, I am talking about the undivided Bengal. I mean, the present Bangladesh also includes in my explanation of when I say Bengal. So this. When I studied more about these people and then the contribution actually they have made to the development of the present India-Japan narrative is extraordinarily huge, which cannot be, and we need to acknowledge that. That is the purpose of my selection of these luminaries. And here. As it was pointed out, I have selected Swami Vivekananda's visit and what actually he did. After that, he wrote and made speeches, and then the impact of what he saw there and what was the message to especially to the Indian youth. he conveyed through his lectures and his writings, that part is very, very important. So I'm going to focus on that a bit. Then Rabindranath Tagore, he's of course everybody, most of us know, and we are all aware what a great personality he has been, and his impact in many, not only in the poetry, in painting, and many other areas has been very, very huge. And the third one that I have, I will not put in the category of a luminary, but then that is why I say a commoner who at that time when intercultural marriages were frowned upon, not very well, one cannot even think. There was a Japanese boy marrying an Indian girl, that too from Bengal, and maybe a little bit more. When I explain more on that, I will come to that. And the fourth is the Rasbihari Bose, the Indian revolutionary, who was an officer in the British colonial rule, and then he was involved in some assassination conspiracy case, and then he finally how he escaped to Japan, from outside he wanted to fight and also garnered the support of the Japanese against the Britishers to free India. So his role is very, very significant, and also related to his role is also something to relate with the Indian cuisine in Japan, how he made that very popular. So that part I'll also briefly explain. And of course, finally, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. On that I will speak very less, because Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose has been in the news because of the installation of a statue near India Gate, which was a much delayed. Actually, it should have happened many, many years ago. Before now, it goes to the credit of the Modi government that the proper acknowledgement that was due has been given to him. And lastly, Justice Radha Binod Pal. He was the single judge in the 11-member jury for the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, which is popularly known as Tokyo Trial. He was a single judge. There are 3 judges from Asia, and he was one of them. And he was the only one who gave the dissenting judgment that exonerating all the Japanese of any war crimes, to the extent that he was very blunt and said that if, anyway, I will come to that a bit later. Before I further explain on each of these luminaries, and also the commoner Hariprabha and Takeda marriage, let me go back to little past, because to put these developments in context, it will be inappropriate on my part not to mention the influence of Buddhism. That is where our roots actually lie. As all of us know, the Buddhist influence not only in Japan but the entire Southeast Asia, and also Northeast Asia. In those days when travel was very difficult, but then the power of the philosophy was so huge that it reached the source of many countries. And here one fascinating aspect that I would like to stress upon is there were many European colonial powers. They used trade and commerce to reach a foreign land, but with the ulterior motive to colonize, and also they brought many countries into their colonial control. But India's historical legacy, we have our own civilizational strength that which is embedded in our spiritual strength as well. That we have wherever Indian culture has gone, whether with the purpose of maritime commerce or otherwise, we have reached another foreign land, and got willingly, and also, we have been, we have welcomed and we have got assimilated with the local culture, and in the process, we have enriched the culture of that particular country. So, how an incident of an Indian monk, Bodhisena, and subsequent the literature which has emerged that he hailed from Madurai, and he was a monk, and he was very much excited to meet and also interested to meet Manjusri, the Bodhisattva, who was in China, and then he wanted to go there. And he went with a very difficult sea voyage in South China Sea, and there was a shipwreck, and one the ship in which he was traveling by Vietnam. By the way, Vietnam is another country where Buddhist, the Indian influence and also the Buddhist influence has remained very, very strong until today, especially the Champa province area. So in that, there was a trader who was there for dealing with the pearl trade, and they became friends there. And then, but finally, that trader also was influenced so much that he himself became a monk. So he also went there with great difficulty, reached China. But after reaching China, he was told that Manjusri has already, he's not in China, but has gone left for Japan. And there was a business delegation around that time. This was in 752 AD, I'm telling, 752 AD. And finally, he was advised by that they should go with them, and they brought him. And the 54th emperor that time, Emperor Somu, by the way, the capital was in Dara, and one Japanese monk was instrumental to take him to introduce the monk to the emperor. And emperor was already so much influenced by Buddhism that he had that respect for the Indian monk who came from the place of Buddha's birth. And by that time, China had already built a big statue of Buddha, having come under the influence of Buddhist philosophy. And the Japanese emperor wanted to construct a statue bigger than that. And he engaged, there are reports that the entire silver of the country was used to build that statue, and also gold were imported. And there is, it is called Daibutsu, that is Todaiji temple in Nara. Daibutsu means the big Buddha, Daibutsu. So it was built, and there is a ceremony which is called eye-opening ceremony. And that ceremony is symbolic of a big event, which is believed that once the eyes of the statue is eyes of the statues are open, then the spiritual power of the living Buddha comes back to the statue. So this is the belief. So this is a very big ceremony, and the emperor invited more than 10,000 monks from Mongolia, from Korea, from China. But then the honor of doing this, their opening ceremony, was given to the Indian monk Bodhisena. And there is a shrine till today in Nara where the pots which are used, the brush that Bodhisena used, and also the other accessories which were used to open the eyes of Daibutsu are all preserved there. So this is what actually is something very, very significant. Means when I say historical context, this again comes to the picture. So with this background, we have that spiritual, and the civilizational connect centering on Buddhism. Now, subsequently, let me give a little bit of background about what are the situation within Japan. During the Edo period, the Tokugawa period, there were two big clans, the Satsuma and Chosu. And there are so many daimyos, more than maybe 700 daimyos also under their control. And they used to fight. They're all warlords. Fight for control. And for 264 years, from 1603 to 1867, the Tokugawa rulers had imposed a policy of seclusion, which means there will be no contact with the outside world. It was Japan remained absolutely secluded. No Japanese will be allowed to leave Japan, and no foreigner will be allowed to enter Japan. So this is a seclusion, policy of seclusion, and which continued for 64 years. And these two warlords clans, they used to fight. And finally, they came into understanding that no, now I think we must stop all this and restore the emperor, the institution of emperor by transferring all the powers to the emperor. So that is what is called the Meiji Restoration in 1868. Now, before that, during the period when Japan was a closed country, in 1853, the Americans were, as I said, the Europeans and American, powers, they were trying to reach out, different foreign source for trade, and one American, this is called Black Sheep, I think it's called, and led by Commodore Matthew Perry, Thomas Perry, Matthew, what is it? Yeah, Matthew Perry, not Thomas, Matthew Perry, in 1853, and forced open Japan, and Japan, had to abandon the policy of seclusion, and then came the Meiji Restoration. Now, once the Meiji Restoration started, then Japan was exposed to the outside world, and slowly started learning about how different the outside world is and how beautiful the outside developed, actually, not beautiful, developed, beautiful in the sense it is a economically or culturally or in other areas it is developed vis-a-vis Japan. So they started learning the good point from outside world, and slowly also started thinking to, as I said, let me add here, Japan is a very, very resource deficient country, and around this time Japan doesn't have even till today any domestic critical resources of any critical raw materials. Almost about 100% it depends on imports. And once this Meiji Restoration started, the 1880s, 90s onwards, they started also reaching out to the foreign shore. And first target was the Korean Peninsula. And they went, like as the Britishers did in reaching to India in Calcutta, to that East Indian Company. Similarly, the Japanese also started doing that, and slowly, they signed many unequal treaties. And then finally, as it happened in 1910, they colonized, they annexed the entire peninsula, and the Korean Peninsula remained as a colony until Japan's defeat in 1945 for 35 years. So anyway, that is a different story altogether. Nothing to not relevant to the present context. Now, coming with this background, now let me come back. What are the impact of Swami Vivekananda's visit to Japan on and the speeches and then the writings that he wrote, and he delivered speeches, and what kind of message he gave to the Indian, especially the Indian youth. Swami Vivekananda actually was traveling to attend the World Congress of Religion in Chicago in 1893, or what is it?
Yes, 1893.
Yeah, 1893, and he spent some days in Tokyo, and then he observed the level of discipline, the level of etiquette, in terms of punctuality, in terms of the way of life these are something, not unless you witness, you cannot read this in text and really feel the importance of that. And let me share then during my several visits to Japan, the same culture even till today Japanese practice, and I'm very much impressed. And I personally have maybe imbibed some of those habits. So Rabindranath Tagore, around that time also there are some other important personalities who have traveled to Japan, but since I am focusing only on Japan, only on Bengal, I'm not mentioning that, but briefly I might even mention that the other important leaders who had traveled to Japan around that time is our Visvesvaraya and Syed Ross Musad and also Tata. Now, J.R.D. Tata. Now, Vivekananda's visit after he came back, he wrote many speeches and also delivered many lectures, and he said that he urged upon the Indian youth that they must go to Japan and learn on the spot how rich in terms of culture this country is. So, and I think more than that I need not say, because Vivekananda is the kind of personality he is. All of us are aware of it. But in the context of his Japan Connect, I think this visit must find a place in our understanding of Indo-Japan relation in the historical context. Now, who funded actually his visit to Chicago is another story, which may not be relevant, but still passingly I must mention. And how he developed, who gave him the name Vivekananda, and who asked him, or how did he decide to use the turban and then the flowing robe. It was, he had met Maharaja
of Khetri.
Yes, Maharaja Pratap Singh or what? Of Khetri, and they had met in Mount Abu, I think, Mount Abu, and there, because of the weather there, the Maharaja of Khetri had advised him that since the weather is not so good, he must use a turban, and that finally, also the flowing robe, and he gave the name, Vivekananda. That is how that became his attire for life. So I think I should move to the next, which will be more interesting, Hari Prabha. Or maybe before I go to Hari Prabha and Takeda Matrimony, let me speak about Tagore. Now, Tagore had visited in 3 or 4 times to Japan. I think 5 times probably he had gone to Japan, and he had that this is the time when there was another great Japanese philosopher and also art curator, Okakura Tenzin, and they had met for a short time in 1902 in Calcutta. This was before Tagore went there, and they did not meet many times, and there is no known photograph of these 2 great personalities ever. I have not seen it anywhere, and also the writings also say that there is no photo of both of them together. And they were influenced greatly, and they shared a big vision about Asia. And this is the time when Japan, as a small country, had defeated 2 big powers, Asian powers, China and Russia. In the the talking point was a dwarf defeating 2 giants, and this was Rabindranath Tagore and Okakura Tenzin. They both saw this in the realm of a kind of new awakening in Asia, vis-a-vis the American, the European powers. So, so this was both these leaders, they saw in the context of how Asia must find its own identity and stand on its own feet and should not be seen as subservient to the European powers. Okakura Tenzin and wrote one book, Asia is One. And they met, wait a minute. Yes. In the beginning, Okakura Tenzin wrote two books, The Awakening of Asia, and in which the first line was Asia as One. So this impressed Tagore, and both these leaders started seeing the future of Asia from the same light. Later on, subsequently, there were differences which came into surface. While Okakura Tenzin was an art curator, and he was instrumental in building the art museum in Chicago, he collected many artifacts from China, from Japan, and also other countries, but there was nothing from India. So which actually made Tagore curious. Why? If he's talking about Asia is one, there is nothing. So that troubled Tagore. And later on, Okakura Tenzin started supporting Japan's this policy of kind of aggression. The Asian, looking for an Asian identity, some kind of Asian renaissance is fine, but then the nature of Japan's aggressive posture policies, that also Tagore disapproved. And on his third visit to Tokyo, to Japan, when Tenzin was there, Tagore delivered speeches disapproving, but he did not meet him. So, and of course, subsequently, after Okakura Tenzin's death, his follower Noguchi, Teo Noguchi, he was a great follower of Okakura Tenzin, and he was a disciple actually, and he was trained and studied in Europe, and also he had many, it is reported that he had many affairs there, and also fathered a child. But then he came back to Japan, and there the differences between Okakura Tenzin philosophy and Tagore, he started widening, and I think, but Tagore's role, as in case of Japan, as also elsewhere wherever he has traveled, I think the foundation he laid is very significant. And Rabindranath Tagore's other country, while Rabindranath Tagore was typically Indian, he had the Indian robe, the Indian way of living, and he built this Santiniketan as his legacy. Okakura Tenzin, even though he was a Japanese, he was speaking English and less of Japanese, whereas Tagore spoke more in his native language to express his views. So I think at that, let me leave with Rabindranath Tagore and speak a bit about the commoner Hari Prabha and how much time?
10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Hari Prabha and women matrimony. Now, that time when the situation in Japan was very, very bad economically, this Ueman Takeda, he had come to work in a soap factory in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, owned by a local Bengali gentleman. And since he was a bachelor, he was feeling lonely in the during his off time, and he used to go to a Brahma Samaj meeting where just to spend time and also relax. And there the Hariprabha, also a Brahma Samadhist, used to be there, and that is where they met together, and finally they decided to marry. And this is the time when, as I said, the intercultural marriages were very, very, rare and unthinkable, I would say. And as it happens in the case of the Indian or maybe Asian, marriage of a girl, even if outside, one must go to the in-laws' house to seek blessing. So they traveled there, and they went there, and then she came back, and 64 pages book in Bengal in Bengali language she wrote. This is a Bongo Mohila Japan Jatra, which was published subsequently by her sister. So the book may be very, very small, but then it is very, rich with information about the way she has observed, and she has a very close eye for all details, and everything minutely she has observed and written it in her diary, which was based on which this was published. So if I can add, slightly deviate from this slightly, but still it is relevant in the context of how this marriage could happen. And she went there, and she was a kind of object of curiosity. And after, in fact, she went 3 times, and then she came back. And I think in 1971, probably she died. So she was received very well by the mother-in-law and not allowed to do anything. So these are all things which none in India ever even knew about it. So these are all information which actually contributes to the, directly or indirectly, between the people of both the countries. For example, one single, one observation she makes. When during the British time, when you see the British police, you get kind of sense of fear. But there, the police was very, very helpful, very, very courteous, very helpful. So this is something she observed, and which otherwise people would not have even known. In fact, she was so much impressed that Hariprabha, in fact, she came back here, and I think the 3rd visit was, I think 4 months she stayed. So maybe leave Hariprabha at that stage, and let me go to Netaji. Netaji also I will not go into details, but only thing I would like to say that, before that I would focus on Raspberry. Raspberry Bose is another, Indian devotee. He went there, and then that is the time when the Britain and Japan had signed the Anglo-Japan alliance, and based on that alliance, there was a death warrant, and he had escaped. So the Britishers put pressure on the Japanese government to arrest him and deport him. But Raspberry Bose got local support, and there is a bakery in Shinjuku called Nakamuraya. He was given shelter there. And then, being an Indian, missing the Indian cuisine, he started cooking his own food, and from there it emerged, and that aroma of the Indian dishes started spreading, and then slowly his initiation of this Indian curry later on became a very standard popular dish, and in the name of Indo curry. And now in any restaurant you go to, any Indian restaurants in Tokyo or anywhere else you go in Japan, though the Indian restaurants are not exactly Indian restaurants, because these are of course Indians are there running, but then there are many also Bangladeshis and Pakistanis. They use the word Indian, and they run Indian restaurants and serve the same Indian curry, because the food is almost same. Not almost, it is same. So there is a Japanese journalist and later on journalist and professor Nakajima. He has written a book which was published in Japanese and which is translated into English and published, I think, in 2007 or 2007 in Delhi. That gives details about the Nakamura dish. So much so that the Japanese Navy has a Friday, fixed menu into curry. So that is the level of popularity and also legacy. Now, Netaji's point I will not say further, because Raspberry Bose there he started forming his own group, and it is believed, though it is a very controversial thing, I will not take side. The original the Azad Hind Fauj, which actually which was subsequently led by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in Singapore. This was formed in Japan by Raspberry Bose. There are reports to say that, and also there are some Indian writers, like for example Nair, A.M. Nair. He also has one more restaurant in the Ginja area, and also very close. And for some time he was interpreter also, interpreting and helping Raspberry Bose. He himself says that he writes in his book that he was not given due credit which actually he deserved. So anyway, that is a bit controversial, so I will not take side, and this is just mentioning the facts only. So he came back. He came, and when he learned that Netaji was coming in the submarine from Germany, they met, and being very impressed by a very young, charismatic leader, he transferred all power and he to Netaji, and rest is history. So we all know about it, and I will not speak further. Now, my last actually in the list is the role of Justice Radha Binod Bihari Paul, which is extremely significant in the more contemporary context. Now, as I said, the Allied powers had selected 3 Asian judges in the 11-member panel of the court, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, popularly known as the Tokyo Trial. And Justice Binod Bihari Paul, he being a Bengali, probably he was familiar with the Indian nationalist movement and might have been influenced also by the Indian thought process there. And maybe he looked maybe from a different perspective, or maybe differently, and he felt that as per law, I think it was not a jury formulated to deliver justice, but before the decision was taken, the decision was already taken to punish them. So the first you decide that they are guilty, and then they form as a kind of facade. So this was contested by Justice Binod Bihari Paul, and in the final judgment, when everybody were given all hearings and everything, all over, when the final judgment day, everyone was giving guilty, 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 and then finally Justice Binod Bihari Paul, he thundered, not guilty. So everybody were taken aback. So this is what he had, that courage and conviction that law must not compromise on anything. And he says, if what the Japanese did during the war is a bigger crime, what the Americans did to decide, what the American, when the American decided to bomb 2 cities on the civilians is a much bigger crime. And they should be, also equally culpable for similar kind of punishment. So this is in any diplomatic meetings, our ambassadors or envoys, any meeting, Justice Binod Bihari Paul's this contribution is remembered with gratitude. And in the Tokyo, there is a shrine called Yasukuni Shrine, very close to the Indian Embassy in Kutanseta area, where there is a stone plaque, with a message from, brief, summary of the verdict which Justice Paul had delivered in his dissenting judgment is mentioned. And so this is a great honor for the judges. And in 2000, even in fact, whenever I had been in Japan and I get a chance, I myself have gone there. I think I visited, and I felt very proud that our judge has helped our Japanese friends, and by delivering the right justice. So 4-5 times I've gone there also, click photos also. So in 2007, when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was in Delhi, after delivering the famous speech in the Indian Parliament, the confluence of the two seas, he had visited Calcutta to meet the family members, his son of Justice Paul's son in Calcutta, to pay respect and also convey the gratitude of the Japanese people. And Justice Paul's son, Prasanta, was invited along with his wife, Minati, to Tokyo and given, I think, some award also. And Justice Paul's son handed over the pen which was used by signing, which was used by his father in signing the dissenting judgment. And that must be in some, I think, museum in Japan. So these are all, in brief. I think I've already, come to my end of my time given to me, and I will close here. And I have not mentioned anything post Japan, which I will keep it for my future, maybe my second in a presentation, in which post World War II and the establishment of diplomatic relations, and subsequently the signing of the San Francisco Peace Treaty, how actually India did not join but signed a separate peace treaty, and subsequent defense, economic, and other engagements. All those are for my second lecture, and here I would like to close, and I'm open for comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panda, for delivering a very insightful lecture and comprehensive as well on the subject. May I now invite questions and comments from all the participants?
Can I just
Please, Meena, go ahead.
can I just congratulate Professor Panda for a very, very interesting, fascinating lecture. So much of this we did not know. I just wanted to ask you, has any work been done on Justice Paul?
There are I have not seen any book as such, but there are lot of information available, and
Okay.
I have that in mind, in fact, to collaborate with a young Japanese scholar who has the not only on Justice Paul but also other insights, the deeper insights, maybe which will add more value. So
Yes.
that is in my mind. So maybe I will do a comprehensive study only on that.
Because this judgment that he gave, it deserves to be known to more people.
It is available. Like, in fact, after the occupation period was over, it is a 1245 pages, dissenting judgment. It is available now.
My goodness.
Yeah, it is available. I think I must be having in my computer somewhere. Yeah, I have. Maybe I will look for it and I can share with you.
No, I just wanted to say I found it very, very interesting. I didn't know so many of these things, It was very, very time very well spent. Thank you so much.
Actually, in 45 minutes, I can't cover everything.
Yeah, obviously.
Justice Paul itself, I need minimum 2 to 3 hours to speak.
Yes.
I think there are other questions. Please go ahead.
Can I just congratulate Professor Panda for this excellent lecture, and I am so very happy that you have addressed several issues which are very important in the context of present situation. Just 2 points. Radha Binod Pal, Justice Pal, was also the Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University. And another very important point which perhaps you have mentioned or I missed, that is when Tagore went in 1916 to Japan, he was accompanied by who later became Mother, Sri Aurobindo, and Mother, that lady had lot of contact with Japan. And if you see Sri Aurobindo's role and then the Axis policy, which I have discussed in my book, India-Myanmar Relation 1886. And I would like to just end by telling or requesting the erudite audience to, if you have time, to look at my present, the latest book, Rabindranath Tagore and Myanmar, India's Actist Policy and India-Myanmar Relation. There I have also brought Japan in the context. It has been published in 2019. And I would like to stop and thank Honorable Director of Nehru Memorial and you and all of you. Thank you very much. I met you once in Calcutta, but I read your articles in the Statesman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am Professor Shopna Bhattacharya, retired professor, and have been working on Myanmar for several years. And I have also visited Myanmar, and I have many stories to tell. Professor Dr. Kasugai from Shantiniketan, who built up the Japanese department. You know, those are the days when Japan was very important in Chinabhavan. But that has changed. Yeah. And his daughter, Asaka Kasugai, was my childhood friend. And my
even
father,
Azuma Sensei's also contribution with Shantiniketan, Azuma Sensei.
Yes, Kaju Ajuma, and
Yeah.
And I was born in 50s, so some narratives are there in my recently published book.
Yeah.
But I stop here. Thank you very much, sir, Director, sir, and all the
Okay, thank you. We have a few questions from Dr. T.N. Jha. I just got a printout. First, did Vivekananda represent Chicago's conference as official representative or in individual capacity? Second, if so, why? Second question is, what is the influence of Indian philosophies upon Japan's socio-religious space? I can't figure out. Second, that the influence of Indian philosophies upon Japan's socio-religious space remained paramount and is all clearly visible, but was there a case of reverse flow of influence from Japan to India? So basically saying that Indian influence remained prominent, but not so the Japanese influence from what we know. But what is the reason? And if so, what were the broad contours of such influence? And third, then, what were the background scenes when Japan adopted Buddhism?
My response to the first one, I do not have any definite answer on that, but my guess is, and my guess probably is correct, that it was the visit was on personal basis, because it was funded not by the government but by a prince, the Maharaja of Khetri, and he had funded him, and also he, I think it was a personal, and probably there was an inner desire on the part of Swami Vivekananda to spread the, or make the outside world aware of the richness of Indian philosophy.
Yeah, if I may just add to what you said.
Yeah.
Though the visit was, of course, personal, from what I vaguely remember now, Swami Vivekananda had to seek some kind of a nomination before he participated there.
Yes.
Within America itself, of course.
Yes. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, I think you are correct, because without any nomination, he would not have been accepted, because the way actually he would have been rejected by the first look of his attire itself, because given the the American culture, but then I think there was a nomination. The other part is the Indian influence in Japan has reached, but not vice versa, which is true. And that is exactly why actually I have tried to select and also pick up the Hariprabha Matrimony Alliance, and how actually this had impact. Let me tell you one small incident. Japan, one need to understand Japan as a country, how actually they feel so proud of their own race even till today. And though intercultural marriages are very, very common, frequent these days, but still the native Japanese have still reluctance to even accept the offspring of such marriages as full Japanese, and they have they use a very one word I would say in derogatory terms. Though my Japanese friends denied that, but that is a fact. They are all called hafu, when half Japanese, H-A-F-U, hafu. So much so, in 2015, when one girl, Priyanka Yoshikawa, whose father is a Bengali and mother is a Japanese, she was crowned Miss Japan. There was uproar inside Japan. Many people said, how can a hafu can become represent Japan? I mean, can become Miss Japan. So this kind of I would not like to use the word kind of racialism. That is something which I never intend to do that. But then they feel proud of their own race and the purity of the Japanese race as they feel and think. It's there, despite the several cases of intercultural marriages. There are I know for there are many Indians who go there and marry Japanese, and also the same is true from but the less number of Indian girls marrying Japanese are there, but more of Japanese marrying Indian girls are there. Yeah. I hope I have answered.
There are more questions. Can you just increase the font size? Let me see.
Yeah, Bhavani Dikit.
What is the question?
Subodh Patnaik.
Subodh Patnaik's question is, any philosophical impact of India on Japan apart from Buddhism through Tagore or Vivekananda? Through Tagore or Vivekananda? In India or not?
Hari Prabha became a
freedom fighter in India or not?
No. Raspberry Bose marriage with Japanese and girl and role in the freedom fight. It may be elaborated. Yes. Raspberry Bose married, I think his name is Toshiko or something. Toshiko something. I forgot the exact name. But she was just a housewife because she had no role, but she willingly took up all the domestic responsibility, leaving Raspberry Bose free to continue his revolutionary activities. And by the way, she after marriage she had delivered 2 small children, and she had died very young at the age of I think 28 or something, leaving behind 2 small children, and the entire responsibility of growing up the children fell on Raspberry. And I think one child continued to stay in somewhere in I think in Tokyo only, in some other area. So she had no role directly in the freedom movement of India. She only continued to give moral support. And what is the other one? Just above that question. So one more is there.
Did Hari Prabha become a freedom fighter in India or not? No, you said.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I think that's all. Yeah. Any other questions?
Bhavani Dikit was there. Bhavani Dikit.
You can just raise your hand and ask the question rather than typing it there. Yeah. I believe that would be better.
Just I wanted to compliment Dr. Panda. No question.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, pranam sir, Subodh bol raha hu. So I couldn't get the answer of the first one. The impact of Indian philosophy in Japan apart from Buddhism.
I think Buddhism was the main, the core, the center of our impact or influence, I would say, in Japan. But what else we can think of? Because I don't think, besides Buddhism, the image of Japan as a land of what is it? Land of knowledge or philosophy. This was actually quite. Let me give you one small example. What kind of image India had actually historically. Even there is, I read somewhere. Let me not confine only on Japan. Let me go little beyond that. The Genghis Khan, when he had emerged as a great warrior and had conquered several parts of the world, and he was eyeing even to invade India, and he had reached up to Afghanistan, and there it seems he saw a dream in which he was told that if you go to India and to invade and annex India, this will be the beginning of your downfall, because this is a land of enlightenment, land of knowledge, land of rich philosophy. So this is the image that India has retained for centuries. So besides, I think the spread of Buddhism, I don't think I can categorize any other influence that India had, because Japan was a closed country for 264 years.
Any other question?
Thank you.
आपका बहुत अच्छा प्रेजेंटेशन रहा, और इतिहास के विद्यार्थी के लिए आपने इसको विशेष रूप से क्राफ्ट किया, तो धन्यवाद उसके लिए। जो चीज मैंने पाया कि आपने बेसिकली कॉलोनियल पीरियड पर जो इम्पोर्टेंट व्यक्ति थे जो भारत से जुड़े हुए थे वहां से, खासकर उस एरिया के, क्या उस पीरियड में जो कॉमन पीपुल वहां रह रहा था भारत का, बंगाल और उस एरिया का, उसका क्या असर हो रहा था जापानीज और भारतीय संबंधों में? क्योंकि जापान सुभाष बाबू के साथ यूं ही नहीं आ रहा था, खासकर रासबिहारी बोस ने एक लंबा समय काटा था, ऐसे तमाम लोगों ने, और भी लोग रहे होंगे। तो वो एक एस्पेक्ट है जिस पर अगर आप कुछ बता सकें कि कॉमन पीपल जिसने एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी संबंधों का विकास किया, और आज जिस तरह से जापान और भारत कॉमन पीपल के तौर पर एक दूसरे को अच्छा समझते हैं, तो उस पर कुछ अगर आप कह सकें।
इसके ऊपर है एक्चुअली कुछ खबर तो है, बट डिटेल मेरे पास अभी नहीं है, लेकिन इतना ये मालूम है कि कोबे में बहुत इंडियंस थे, ट्रेडिंग कम्युनिटी, एंड ये अर्थक्वेक के कोबे एंड योकोहामा, दो जगह में से काफी इंडियन कम्युनिटी कम्युनिटी जैसे आप जो बता रहे हैं थे, और ये वार के टाइम पे और ये अर्थक्वेक के टाइम पे कुछ थोड़ा सा डिसरप्शन हुआ था, कुछ लोग वापस आ गए और फिर ठीक ठाक बात सुधरने के बाद फिर वापस चले गए थे। और भी कुछ छोटा लेवल का एंटरप्रेन्योर्स वगैरह भी वहीं पे गए थे। फॉर एग्जांपल एक मनमथ नाथ दास, उन्होंने ही वॉज एन एंटरप्रेन्योर, तो वहां पे वो गए थे कुछ ज्ञान प्राप्त करने के लिए, जो कि वहां इंडिया को ला के उसको यूज करके अपने इम्प्रूवमेंट ऐसे कुछ कर सकते हैं। तो उन्होंने भी 2-3 किताब लिखे हैं अभी, तो वो किताब का भी कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन तो हमको मिलेगा। दैट आल्सो वी कैन, लाइक आई कैन गिव यू द नेम्स। ये है, नहीं है, मैंने लिखा नहीं सकते कहीं पे, एनीवे है 3 बुक्स लिखे थे वो बुक्स का भी डिटेल्स मेरे पास, वो बुक अवेलेबल मेरे पास नहीं है, लेकिन रिपोर्ट्स में जब देखा हूँ तो इस तरह का और भी सेवरल लो लेवल में और मे बी कॉमन ह्यूमन बीइंग लेवल में, आई वुड से नॉट लो लेवल, कॉमन ह्यूमन लेवल में कलकत्ता में ऐसे काफी है, जैसे अरविंद आश्रम के साथ जुड़े हुए हैं, और भी कुछ है। उसमें मेरा थोड़ा सा लंबा डीपर रिसर्च में करने वाला हूँ, और कुछ खबर मेरे पास है कि जिनके पास इसमें ज्यादा जानकारी है, तो उन्हीं के साथ मेरा अभी टच में मैं हूँ, और साथ कुछ एक पेपर कम से कम लिख सकता है, इग्नोर बुक, तो ये दिमाग में है मेरा।
Any other question? हाँ, please go ahead.
This is Shamshad Ahmed Khan. Of course, I have been your student, and it was enlightening to listen to your views on uh, the role of Bengal in India-Japan relations. So one of the issue I think that needs elaboration is Eamon Roy's visit to Japan. I think this has been mentioned a bit in the book written by P. Narasimhamurthy, but much detail is not there. Like we have the details about Rabindranath Tagore's visit, like visit taken by Raspberry Bose or Subhash Chandra Bose. Can you throw some light if you have some information about why did he take, what was the purpose of his visit, and what transpired during his visit between India and Japan, or Indian revolutionary and Japanese thinkers at that time?
No, Samsa, sorry, I have not read it, and now that you have put that on me, I think I will push myself a little more deeper to find out little more information, and as and when it's available, I will definitely share with you. So how are you doing there, Dubai?
No, of course I'm fine. I wanted to know because you are talking about Bengalis interaction.
No,
And,
in fact, I only choose and picked up. This is a kind of, as I said, only luminaries. I said so.
Yeah.
M.N. Roy also is a luminary, of course. No, but I have not included that.
And of course, he's from Bengal.
I know. there are many more people in Bengal, but if I start researching on every Bengalis who are a Japan connect, then I think the NMML fellowship. They have to give me another, I think, 2 fellowships, 2 more terms. Then only I can do that.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on, a couple of questions which come to my mind listening to your lecture, Dr. Panda. One is that, of course, one can see a certain element of commonality in the people you take up. And as you rightly said, that you have taken a very small sample of well-known people. And I think it is a diverse sample also. So it's a very well-chosen sample that you have taken. So other than the fact that all of them had highly positive opinions about Japan, do you find any specific diversities across the spectrum within the sample that you have taken? That is one question that comes to my mind. Or was it just a positive perception about Japan and the Japanese perception about India being the same? This is one. And second is, do you see any points of departure between the Indian perception or the Bengali perceptions, whatever you choose to call them, of Japan and their perceptions about China? Because these are the 2 major East Asian civilizations, Japan and China. Though you don't specialize in China, but I believe obviously you would know about China as well. So do you think that there were any marked differences between the perceptions of these 2 civilizations among Indians?
I think the first part of your question, there is nothing I would come across negative in the thinking of Japanese about India. I have always have seen either way, other side, only positive feelings or positive point of view. About China, even though it is not my area of research, though I do on the contemporary security strategic issues a bit, but about connecting to the history, I think it may not be desirable to compare Japan-India relation and Japan-China relation in the historical context, because Japan and China relation in history is not very smooth. There are 2 elements. One is they have learned and gained a lot from China, including their alphabet. But then subsequently, they also have a very bitter experience, which in fact continues till today, which is not the case in India, because we have absolutely no irritant at all positive. So in what way we can compare?
No, I think, I didn't, probably I couldn't make myself clear. What I wanted to know was that not the, Chinese-Japanese relations or perceptions of each other at all. I wanted to understand, was there any difference between the Indian perceptions of the two countries and two civilizations?
I don't think so.
You think both were equally positive?
I guess so.
The Indian perceptions or Bengali perceptions, probably that would be more right.
Actually, Bengali
about both Japan and China, you are saying were equally positive.
The perception of the Bengali luminaries, which I have chosen, as you said, it's a balanced selection. I have not read their thinking or their policy or their interaction ever through history with China. So I cannot say what, definitely.
Yeah, one reason this question came to my mind was that since your lecture focuses on the era of Meiji Restoration, when Japan had already embraced Western modernity, and it was trying to industrialize itself fast, and by the 1920s, when Tagore, etc., were visiting, certainly Japan was a power to be reckoned with. Whereas China was in tumult at that time. That is the reason I thought that if there is any contrast, it may be worth studying.
Maybe, I think so far as the Japan's war with China was concerned, India was never in favor of that, and Tagore made it very clear that we are Asians but not against each other, and we should not fight. And the fact that is one way of looking at it.
But did it really matter whether we were Asian or not? Because Asians have always fought with each other, just as Europeans have fought with each other.
No, we have fought with each other, but then during that colonial era, vis-a-vis the European powers,
yes,
I think the thinking was is a kind of Asian, seeking an Asian identity, some kind of resurgence of Asianness. So from that point of view, if we think, I think we should not narrow down to only on bilateral context, but then in the larger Asian sphere or Asian context, if we see, I think Tagore and Okawara Tenzin, they saw beyond the bilateral level, but only when Japan became very aggressive, which Tagore did not approve. That troubled the kind of differences. Slowly, Rabindranath Tagore started noticing many differences between India and Japan. Basically, the Noguchi's case, for example. In fact, Noguchi came to India to seek support, on his cause, but he had to go back, disappointed. So, from that point of view, I think India stands much in a different place, I would say. Much in a different pedestal, I would say.
So, Dr. Panda, in a way, you are suggesting that Indians, especially those we have discussed today, had an almost equally positive opinion about the two civilizations, but of course, they did not approve of the Japanese aggression on China during the Second World War, and they were critical of it, isn't it?
I think yes. I mean, it might be correct to say, put it that way. Yes.
Thank you very much. I think we have run out of time completely, and we have had a long and very interesting question-answer session. So we reached the end of this program today. I thank Dr. Rajaram Panda, our senior fellow, for delivering this lecture here. And I thank all the participants who have taken time out this afternoon to be here and who have participated in the discussion. We will, of course, continue with our webinar series. Thank you very much.